Today on the Truvix Podcast, I'm joined by Danny Schwab, owner of KeyRenter South Florida. With nearly 30 years of experience and over 400 doors under management across Florida, Danny has built his career on fairness, long-term investment strategies, and educating landlords. He's seen the highs and lows of everything in between, and today, he's here to share his journey and lessons learned along the way. Danny, I know I just scratched the surface. Why don't you just tell our listeners a little more about yourself and your journey?
Appreciate the invite, Marcus. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning. Yeah, as you said, I've been in this game for about 30 years. I grew up in Chicago. I bought my first investment property in 1995. So I've been, in this game for a lifetime. And as you said, the highs and lows, I had a great portfolio pre the recession. I rode that wave up and then rode that wave down. Like most of us that were in the real estate game in 2008, we took our lumps. It was a very hard experience, but it was a great experience for me. I learned a lot, the ups and downs of real estate, of property management. In my 20s, I've made every mistake someone can make. So it's really great to work with, property owners that are new to the space, that are trying to get involved. I love working with younger people that are getting their first property or working towards getting their first property. And also, trying to, unring the bell of people that have been doing it wrong for 15 or 20 years and try to get them to see the light. So it's been a wild ride, and, things are going strong here in Florida, and I look forward to our market picking up again. Hopefully we'll see 5% interest rates in the near future.
Yeah, hopefully. That definitely will increase the market with the lower interest rates. So you've been in property management for 30 years. Just looking back, what's one lesson 2008 crash taught you about managing both properties and people?
It's a valuable lesson, and I have this conversation, I'd say 2 or 3 times a week. Don't spend the money you make on rental income. Leave it in the bank, right? Save up for that rainy day. Save up for that time when you have a vacancy or you have an issue, right? People don't like to reinvest their earnings back into their business. We have to treat property management and properties we own as annuity, as a long term. It's like any investment, your 401k. You put money into it every year so that it can blossom. We have to reinvest this money into our properties. We don't run it as a piggy bank that we take money out of. As a cash flow. It has to be a piggy bank. We have to leave that money in there. We have to plan for the rainy days. We have to plan for when a market can tank, where you're used to getting $2,500 a month. Now you're lucky to get $2,000 a month. You know what I mean? So that's the biggest lesson, is like, run it as each property is an individual business. Leave the money in there.
Okay, that's great lessons. So as far as you talked about managing everything from single family homes to multi-units, what types gives you the most headaches and why?
It's really, the headaches come from the owners, but multifamily is its own entity. Anybody who's in the multifamily space knows that when it rains, it pours. If you have a leak in one unit in a single family home or a condo, you're dealing with one person, right? You're dealing with one vendor, you're bringing it in. But now put that times 20 or times 30. You got to turn the water off to fix something. That's 30 people, 30 units. And how many people live in those units? It could be 100 people. You've got babies, you've got elderly people. So multifamily is difficult, and it's definitely some of the hardest properties to manage versus, an upscale condo or a townhouse or a single family home. You also have an owner that probably lived in that house at one point, that wants it to be a positive experience, that wants it to stay, so 10 years down the road after renting it, they can sell it. So they're in tune with you calling them and say, hey, listen, I see a spot in the ceiling. We got to get in there. We got to take care of it now. Where, you do that with a multifamily property owner for a bigger building. They like to kick that can down the curb, for as long as they can. Multifamily is really, really hard.
No, I definitely, what you just talked about as far as, one unit compared to multiple units having an issue at the same time, I can see why that could be a little bit more challenging.
Oh, absolutely. When, a small kitchen fire in one unit can really do damage to a building. And, you've got to deal with a lot of upset people, and you got safety and security issues that you don't deal with in, a single family home.
So you said that you prefer working with accidental landlords over pure investors. Why is that dynamic more rewarding for you?
Well, it's like a lot of times, especially let's say just in today's market, right? You gotta leave town. You gotta, move to another city to take care of your family. Your mom or dad is sick, or you have an issue. You get married, something positive, and you can't sell your home for what it's worth in your mind, right? You can't get out from under it. You don't want to be in a negative position. So you're helping people in tough times. And you also have someone, again, as I've said a couple times here, you're dealing with people that want to invest in their property. They want it to be a positive experience. They want it to be an annuity, a long-term play. So you're also working with people that are hiring you because you're the professional. They respect you. They need your advice. So there's a lot of people don't want to deal with that because there's a lot of hand-holding. There's those 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock phone calls at night where they read their owner statement and where they can't figure it out and they're stressed. Or they get a call from a neighbor that, the HOA was by and you're gonna get a violation. So there is a lot of stress involved with calming people down and making sure they feel comfortable. But, it's definitely rewarding to help somebody get from a very stressful position to, hey, this is great. I'm getting a check every month. I didn't have to sell my house and now we can work towards, possibly buying an investment property in the future, and they get that bug, right? I love it when it turns from, hey, I'm stressed out, I got a bad situation, to, hey, I want to buy another one. My neighbor's condo's for sale. I think I'm going to buy it. What do you think? And then the wheels are turning, and people are jazzed about it. So I love that.
So do you have that conversation with accidental owners or investors as far as using it like an annuity? Do you have the same conversation with them?
It's a daily conversation with people, right? A very common way that starts is we collect rent on the 1st, right? It's late on the 5th, pretty normal throughout the United States. We pay the owners out on the 10th. Now, the tenant doesn't pay the rent by the 10th. The owner's, where's my money? I got a mortgage payment to pay for. My mortgage will be late on the 16th. And that's the conversation. Hey, you can't rely on this month's rent to cover your mortgage. Your mortgage has to be on an auto pay from an account that has 3 months of mortgage taxes and insurance, right? It's the only way to do it. If you're relying on that, then you're waking up at night, calling me and say, hey, did they pay the rent? Is the rent there? We can't operate that way. We have to operate from a position of calm. We all know there's going to be a situation in the 1 year span of an annual lease where the tenant doesn't pay for whatever reason. His check gets bounced. His work's messed up. He's in a car accident. He's out of town and forgets, So it's an important conversation to have and to get people from saying, this is my house, this is my baby, to this is a business. This is an engine that has to perform.
All right, another question. Have you ever had to fire a client because they refused to do the right thing for tenants or the property? So how did that play out?
All right, sorry to cut you off there. I just couldn't even control myself. I've had to fire dozens of clients, and a lot of times it's worked out where I have to say, hey, listen, you're asking me to do something that I can't do. Whether it's ethical reasons, I won't rent to a single mom, I hate kids, I don't want kids in my property. We're realtors, right? We can't tell somebody you can't rent to them. And also, I have, KeyRenter, we have a code of ethics. We have a lot of moral clarity, right? We believe in doing the right thing. So, I had a client, and he's still my client today. And I've had to go as far as to say, I'm giving you a 30-day notice to terminate our management agreement, and I'm walking. And for instance, this is some of the things he's tried to do before as an investor. We have a property that we rented to a family, single-family home with a central air conditioner. The central air goes down, and we all know how much a new AC costs today. And he says, I can't afford it. I said, well, that's not really an option here. He says, let's just put window units in the house. I said, I've got a family that signed a lease. The lease says there's a central air system. If your house can't support the amount of electric it would take to put window units throughout the house and not run a central air, and then the tenants are going to have an electric bill that's 4 times as much. I go, not going to happen. We're going to cover an AC. KeyRenter's going to pay for your AC. We're going to deduct it from future rent, and we're going to do it that way, or I have to walk. So there's all kinds of conversations. I've had to fire a client because it was a large portfolio. Some were multifamilies, some were single family homes. And I'm walking the property with the owner, and it's a Latino family. The parents didn't speak English, and the young child, maybe 4 or 5, who speaks a little, 4 or 5-year-old doesn't speak a lot, doesn't have a lot of vocabulary, but they can speak English, was pulling on my shirt from behind me. I kneel down to talk to the kid, and he goes, "Can you please make it stop raining in my room?" And we go in there, and there's a massive roof leak. So I'm with the owner, and I start talking to her, and I say, "Hey, do you have a roofer you work with? Do you want me to get someone over today?" It's not in our budget to fix it this month. Not in our budget. When this person has millions of dollars worth of real estate, right? We're touring multiple properties. And right there, I'm like, hey, I'm done. We're fixing this roof. We're cutting open the ceiling. We're going to dry it out, and we're calling a roofer, or I have to leave. So it didn't work out, and I walked. And I gave up a lot of money on that portfolio. But you have to trust your heart. You have to follow what's right. We have an ethical code that we live by. And without like me talking about risking my license or everything, it's just, I'm a family man. I have a wife, I have a daughter. I can't imagine having to live through that, something so horrific. Because we all know in Florida, if there's rain, there's mold. If there's water, there's mold. It's something we fight every day, So, I could go on and on about bad owners. And, most of the time you're not to that extreme. You're dealing with people that just don't know any better, right? They understand it's business. They want to do things as inexpensive as possible. They hear all this talk in real estate, from the big gurus about cash flow is king, and it's all about cash flow. And I don't live that way. I live in that long-term world, right? Let's clean up the property. I'm really into the add value world, right? Buy an investment property that's in bad shape so you can get in. Let's clean it up. Let's save all the money we make and put it towards projects, air conditioner, appliances, long-term projects, roof, windows. In Florida, I know you're in Texas, we've got hurricanes, we've got tornadoes, we've got all kinds of crazy weather. So you got to protect the infrastructure of your property. You got to make sure the siding is strong. You got to do those things, and the only way you know about it is to be in the field, right? Everybody's worried about AI is going to take your job. AI is going to do this, right? I don't see in the near future, like the next decade, AI walking properties, determining weaknesses, understanding all of the stuff you see in the field. It's a lifetime of experience, right? And I'm not saying that I'm the best expert in the world, but when I can't figure out something, I bring in a plumber, I bring in a roofer, I bring in general contractors. I can't tell the difference between a window leak sometimes or a slab leak when the water's wet, right? But you got to jump on these things. You got to get on them immediately.
Yeah, so you bring in the experts who that's their expertise and field. And so
absolutely,
the knowledge.
It's real hard. And, there's water in the ceiling. Is it the roof? Is the window? Is there an AC? Is there a pipe in the wall? And I get in trouble with my clients all the time. They're like, "Well, you fixed a roof leak. Why is there a $275 plumbing bill?" I go, "We couldn't figure out what it was, so we brought in a plumber. We thought it was a water leak. We thought there was a pipe issue. And it wasn't. But we have to do the exploratory surgery, and it's not always free."
Yeah. Okay. So when you do have to fire your clients, how does those moments make you feel?
I mean, it's like it's the tale of two cities, right? You feel, wow, I'm losing income. It's an emotional thing for this person. Why are you abandoning me sometimes? Or they're angry with you. But in the end, I've made the mistake of not firing someone. I've made the mistake of saying, okay, let's try and work this out. And it just gets worse. It's like a bad tenant, right? If the tenant does something really bad and the owner's like, well, let's give him another chance. Let's re-sign with him for another year. And then something really bad happens and we end up in eviction court, right? You have to trust your gut. You have to know that a leopard's not going to change his spots.
So let's talk about some challenges. I know you compare property management to being a kindergarten teacher dealing with adults. What's the toughest situation you've had to step into, and what did it teach you?
I can't even think back past like the last month because I'm dealing with these situations. I've got an older tenant. I think he's 67 years old, and it's a duplex. So there's one water meter, There's two units, one water meter. There's 2 individual men living in each unit. So we split the bill up 50-50. This guy, every month that he gets the water bill over the last few months, is freaking out. So he sends me a text the other day that's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 15,000 words. Like, it would take me 20 minutes to read it. So I'm skimming it. And, you keep sending me these automatic notices that my water bill isn't paid. So I've explained to him multiple times that it's not a water bill only. It's water, it's sewer, it's trash. It's Delray Beach, Florida, which is not a cheap place to live. So your base bill before any water usage is probably $60 or $50 a month. So he's telling me that he flushes the toilet twice a day. He only showers once or twice a week. And when I shower, I only shower for 1 minute. And I'm thinking, this guy is so disgusting, right? That, like, how do I try to explain to him, right, that his $60 a month water bill is cheap, that a lot of people get a $180 water bill. So, that was a tough one this week. I stepped into a real tough situation about 2 months ago. The first-time property owners who are not born in America, so they're not totally in tune with how things work, bought a 10-acre property. They rented it to somebody without doing a background check, and the relationship died. So I step in, I reach out to this gentleman and say, hey, introduce myself. We're your new property manager. I'm coming in to save the day. I know your relationship is really tough with the owner. F you, hang up, was the response as I'm mid-sentence. I call him back. Now he's screaming at me. I go, okay, now I'd like to speak. You told me you told me you're the property manager when you're the tenant. And I'm reading the lease as this is going on, and he's not even the tenant. He's the co-signer, and they didn't background screen him. He's like, I just got out of jail. I'm willing to go back. You come here, and I'm thinking, like, what I want to say is I'll be there in an hour. You know what I mean? But you can't do that, right? I'm not in Chicago. It's not 1995 anymore. We've matured and we've changed, right? So he screams at me again. So then I write a really, really nice text messages. And when I say a nice text message is I write the meat of the message. This is what's going to happen. This is what we have to do. Your lease has a termination clause. I don't want to enforce that. And then I go back before I send it and I go, hey, how are you? I know we had a rough beginning. And I go to the end. I really appreciate that we can get past this. So I try to make it, clean it up, right? I call it a sandwich text, right? All the serious stuff's in the middle. You say some nice stuff at the beginning, some nice stuff at the end. He hangs up on me. I call him back again. I go, did you read my text? F you. He hangs up. So he reads the text. About 20 minutes later, he calls me back and conversation goes a little bit better. We agreed to talk again. And, now everything's kosher, so you got to let people vent. I've learned you got to let people explode. And you got to have, I'm a hockey goalie from a kid. If somebody scored on me, I can't sit there and look at the back of the net at the puck. I can't sit there and be upset. I got to move on. Yeah. You can F you me all day. You can't F you anybody on my team. You can't talk disrespectfully to women. You can't be a bad guy to anyone else. But I can take it and I can let it roll off my back and I can move forward. So, yeah, those are two things that in the last 2 weeks that I've had to deal with. Wow. And that's my reference, when I say, like, I feel like I'm a kindergarten teacher. I have a 7-year-old daughter. So I know what it's like to talk to somebody when they're in a very irrational, emotional state. And no matter what you say, you're not going anywhere. So sometimes it's best just to, walk away and try again the next day.
Yeah, let them cool off.
Yeah. But people need to vent, Now this gentleman tells me, I hope he doesn't see it because he knows I'm talking about him, but, now he tells me about his marital issues and things like that. And now he's got someone I feel like he can vent to, so sometimes you got to be a stern parent. Other times you got to be their psychologist in this game. It's never a dull moment is what I like to say.
Yeah. No two days are the same.
Exactly. I would not do well if I walked into a cubicle every day at 9 a.m. with my coffee, my pen, get a bathroom break maybe once before lunch, and then you're grinding to 5 o'clock. Like, wouldn't be a good fit for me.
Yeah. So what's the most unreasonable demand you've gotten from a landlord, and how did you respond?
I brought up a little bit of hey, we're not going to fix the roof. But, when it gets into to me, an unreasonable demand is when I'm asked to break the law, right? We have very specific rules and regulations about what we're allowed to do and what we're not allowed to do. So I'm a strong proponent of the housing voucher system, commonly known as Section 8. I think there's a lot of disenfranchised people that deserve and need to live in the neighborhood where they work. I've worked with low-income housing, I've worked with income-restricted housing, and I've had owners that want to judge people based on not their credit score and based on maybe their income, right? And I'm not going to do that. I've taken the liberty and, all legal with the attorney to review our management agreements and stuff that I have final say when it comes to who goes into the house. Obviously, we have very high standards. I'm not saying that I'll put someone in that doesn't deserve to be in there with credit, income, references, been in the same job for 5 years, 2-income family. There's a lot of things that go into what decision we make that's not just credit score. Obviously, we do criminal background search, tenant landlord search to see if they've had evictions, bankruptcies, all that. But I can't allow an owner to tell me no to someone that has every legal right to be in the unit. And those are some of the most difficult conversations. I referenced it before. There's people out there that say, no, I won't rent to someone with kids. It doesn't work that way. I go, you can break the law. And if you're an individual homeowner, you have the right to decide who you want to rent to. It's up to you. But I can't be involved in that situation. And the beauty of it is a calm conversation and a very well thought out email because usually it's, a couple, not just one person. And you try to explain your position to both sides of the family so that maybe you get one of the family members on your side. But I'd say majority of the times it works out. They decide, okay, we're going to follow your lead. You're the professional. And we go for it. But there's other times they're upset and it's a non-starter. But I like to have difficult conversations with homeowners and before we get too deep into it. When, it's very important for me to understand their thought process and the value of their rental property. Because some people will say to me, well, my neighbor rents it for $3,500 a month, and you're telling me that you think it's going to rent for $2,500 a month. And I like to have those kind of conversations to know how realistic we are. I look at pictures through the MLS, Zillow, Realtor.com. We all have access to these tools, and you see the neighbors have quartz countertops, stainless steel appliances, built-in microwave. And you look at this unit, there's no microwave, white appliances, Formica countertop. It's not going to rent for that kind of money, no matter what, however long it's on the market. So having the difficult conversations, setting expectations is crucial, telling them your thought process and how you operate. And if we're not on the same page, then it's great. Let's not work together. My management agreement is written that either party can terminate the relationship with 30 days notice without cause. I love that. I think that when you're signing up with me to manage your property and I explain to them that there's a good portion of companies will charge you 1 month's rent to terminate the lease, terminate the management agreement. And I say you can terminate at any time. It gives them some extra trust that I have to earn their business every month. But I really do it because it frees me up to cut out the bad apples, cut out the people that don't want to follow our protocols, the people that maybe want to get loud with our team when they're not happy with the answers they get. And life's too short to have bad tenants or unrealistic owners, right? We just need to move on, keep the ball rolling. I have to worry about the mental, to make sure my team is comfortable and can survive with, and try to shield them from this outside world. As we know, the world's getting crazier every day. People are more entitled every day,
And that's what one of my questions was about Section 8, balancing when the owners want the highest rent possible and pushing it back. You just elaborated on that.
Yeah, really quick to interject on that is that the beauty of Section 8 that I find is that there's a lot of areas where Section 8 is at or above market value. So there's a lot of times where you're not asking someone to rent their property for less money, and you're getting guaranteed money. People can have this idea that Section 8 is bad or whatever. You're still doing background screening. You're still interviewing the tenants. You're still checking references. Most Section 8 tenants have a job and have income and have been in a good job. I'm talking about firemen, paramedics. I'm talking about, nurses. There's a lot of people that work in these great jobs that are first responders, that are, single moms, that are school teachers. They work with our kids every day. Why should they not be able to live in the same neighborhood that they teach in or that they work at that hospital? Because they don't make enough money because the rent's high? To me, it's some of the best people, some of the best tenants I've ever worked with, some of the kindest people, some of the most hardworking tenants I've ever had are Section 8 people. I mean, you have just as much chance of having a bad tenant be non-Section 8 than Section 8.
What's one truth about property management that most new landlords don't want to hear but absolutely need to?
There's a couple things. I probably touched on them already, is that during the process of every year for each individual unit you own, there's a high probability that you're not going to get paid rent that month for whatever reason. There's going to be issues, especially in, we like to value properties and classify properties A, B, C, and D, right? And if you're in a C to B minus property, these are working people that aren't on salary, meaning they get paid every other Friday. They don't work, they don't get paid. People have car accidents, people have issues, people have to take care of other responsibilities for their children, and they don't make their rent payment. Now, it's a common thing. We got to work through it. We do payment plans, we communicate, and if things get rough, we unfortunately have to go to eviction or a thing I like to call buying keys. So you got to weather the storms, right? You can't, and then another thing that more and more in today's market that we deal with that they have to understand is that you don't make the market. You can't tell this is what I need to make because my taxes, mortgage, insurance, HOA dues state that I have to make $2,400 a month or I'm upside down. It doesn't matter. You need your place to be occupied. Because if you're not occupied and you say it has to be $2,400, and I'm telling you I got someone good to pay right now at $2,100 that will move in, look at today's date, right? We're at the last week of August, basically. If you lower the rent and we move someone in by September 1st, you're getting September rent. If we sit at a higher price and you lose September and you think it's $2,400, that's $2,200 you're never going to get back. Your whole year is messed up. Now you go out 2-3 months and then you drop the price, it's a disaster. So the market decides the price, not you. That's probably the toughest lesson for new property investors to own or people that had steady income. I've been renting that place for years at $2,500. Well, it's not the market today.
Ooh, that's the same thing for sellers.
Exactly, right? How many people are sitting on the market 90 days, 120 days, paying their taxes, paying their insurance, paying their HOA dues, and they're like, oh my God, And one thing I always want to tell people that they don't really know is that you can be working with a realtor to sell your home. You can come to a property manager like myself, and I can list your property for rent. You can get an offer for sale, you can get an offer for rent. You don't have to accept either one, but we can test the market, and if it makes sense to put this tenant in at whatever rent we get and stop the bleeding, as we like to say, get some income going, take it off the market. You take it off the market for 6 months, 9 months, then you're at the end of the lease term, you put it back up for sale. Then maybe in that 2 to 3 month period, you find somebody, maybe the market is better, maybe it's worse, and we re-sign with that tenant for another year. A lot of property managers don't like to do occupied showings. It's part of our deal. We do occupied showings every day. You always have to have these conversations with the tenant when they move it, before they move in. If you explain things to a tenant or an applicant in the application phase, that this is our policies and procedures, and that there's a good chance that at the 9-month mark of your lease, if you're not in tune with signing with us that day, with 90 days left on your lease, absolutely okay, we're going to list the property for rent or maybe for sale. We're going to give you 24 hours notice, and we're going to do showings. If we ask to do a showing, you agree, and then you call us and you say, hey, my kid is sick or any kind of thing, we'll cancel the showing. We have respect for you. You're our tenant. But that's part of the procedure. If you don't have that discussion and you don't communicate with your tenants, and all of a sudden you're at the end of the lease term and you call them up and you say, hey, we got a showing this Saturday at 10 o'clock. And they're like, what do you mean? You can't come here. This is my place. You haven't established yourself. You haven't communicated. So it's really important to establish, and I don't mean this in a negative way or a terrible way, but we are the landlord. You are the tenant. It's a relationship, right? Like, we're the principal, you're the student. We are in charge, not you. We respect you, we care about you. We send a plumber the same day your toilet's broken. We send the air conditioning company the same day. Really bend over backwards to make sure you have a safe environment and a healthy environment, but it's a two-way street. And if you don't communicate with your tenants, you don't do routine inspections, they're not going to let you in without a fight. So that's some of the harder things to do, are occupied showings.
Let's talk about the future innovation on AI and growth. All right. So what AI and automation tools are you currently using in your business, and where have they made the biggest impact?
Man, I am great in the field. I'm great in the room with people and communicating. I can be intense, but I'm also very friendly to people. I'm not the best writer, and writing a really thoughtful email, explaining everything to them, following up with all of their questions, especially with owners that might send you an email with 16-part questions and what would you do if this happened? AI is incredible for correlating all that information, all of my thoughts, and putting together a really thought out email. So the AI portion of property management is we use a property management software, Appfolio. I use Dialpad as a phone system. When somebody sends us a text message or somebody communicates with us, they are giving me a format of a template answer that is very thought out, and they understand our processes. KeyRenter, we have our own AI chatbot that we call Kara. And Kara knows all of our handbooks, like all of our rules and procedures and policies, and will put together a wicked great response for us. So to me, to streamline communication and something that would take me an hour and a half to put together and find all the information is literally done in 30 seconds, and it's done better than I can do. The future within property management is that there's going to be a chatbot that will have a conversation with the tenant. I've seen it in action. They want us to record conversations through the chatbot into an AI template, and then it uses my actual voice to respond to have a conversation with the tenant. It texts me the transcript of the conversation, and I can step in at any moment. I haven't personally used that, but that's this new platform that we're looking to join shortly. So it's truly amazing. It also eliminates a lot of our payroll, right? Instead of needing US-based people that are expensive, that need insurance, that cost a company a lot of money, we're able to use remote team members to go into our system, log into our property management software, and for a fraction of the price are able to perform tasks at the same high level or a higher level than a US-based person in an office. So it's really taking that next step and improving communication, getting through to people, and it happens 24/7. There is no 9 to 5 with property management. I've never had an air conditioner break Monday at 10 in the morning, right? It's never started raining and the roof started leaking Tuesday at noon, right? These things happen on Halloween, on a Saturday night. They happen, man, New Year's Eve. I have PTSD being from Chicago for New Year's Eve. I've had multiple busted pipes on New Year's Day, New Year's Eve, where it's just so cold in Chicago and that pipe bursts. Brutal, right? 10, 15 degrees below zero. You're standing outside. You're dealing with someone who has no heat in their home. There's flooding that's turning into ice. Man, I can't even go out on New Year's anymore. I got to stay home. I'm worried things are going to happen.
Yeah, so you can't enjoy yourself. So on the flip side, what day-to-day challenges are you still experiencing that you wish technology could eliminate tomorrow?
Well, one of the bad things about Florida, and I'm sure it happens in other cities, is fraud, right? There's people that go on to our website, they see, they apply to view one of our properties, they then take our pictures, they go on Craigslist, they rent it to somebody who's really struggling in life. It's happened a few times to us where we have a listing at $3,000 a month, upscale single family home, and we go to the property and someone's standing there with all their boxes, a moving truck, and say, no, here's my lease. I paid $1,800 to move in. Here's my lease, and I got to break it to them. They got taken. So, I hope that, in the future, AI can scrub, these websites, Facebook Marketplace, and Craigslist, places that KeyRenter does not advertise on. And they can find our listings, they can get that to the authorities, to the police, and they can shut these people down. Because they don't pry on the wealthy. They don't pry, they're not taking money from people that can afford to lose it. They're taking it from that single mom. They're taking it from that young couple that saved up all the money they had to move in together. And now they just got taken. And it's one of the saddest things to see, to tell someone, hey man, I'm sorry, but that was fraud. This isn't your apartment. You can't move in. So I'm really hoping that happens. The future of AI for us, I think, is great in our industry. Because again, as I mentioned before, I don't think they're going to be doing the field work. I know Zillow put billions of dollars into taking out realtors and doing everything online, and they just failed, right? They failed miserably. This is a relationship business. I don't think AI is going to be able to look someone in the eye, have a conversation, take their application, cross-reference where they're lying, look in their car, see what kind of person they are, meet their dog in the field to confirm. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that will happen in the future, but you need to be able to have that experience to talk to people, to interview them, to talk to the wife, to call their references, to call their boss. I mean, the amount of hoops we go through to confirm that somebody is legitimate, to get away from these scams. It's mind-bending how much effort we have just to put someone into a unit. And we do all of that to avoid getting taken. So, I'm really interested in using those tools to streamline our efforts, but also we know it's a relationship business. We know it's a shake your hand, and really listen to somebody.
Yeah, it's definitely a relationship business. And AI definitely not going to take that away, the relationship piece of it. And as far as scammers, yes, they're definitely out there. And even in Texas, Craigslist, like you said, Facebook Marketplace is probably the top now.
Yeah.
And most of them, you're right, they're out of Florida.
Yeah, Florida, I mean, I know some in the water down here. All I want to say to anyone who's listening, don't ever just send somebody money. Nobody in our industry is asking you to wire them money or doing it. What we do is we negotiate, we do background screening, you go on a website, you do a huge application, you meet someone in person, has a KeyRenter shirt, has a business card. We talk about it, we produce a lease, do your due diligence. Every property is available, the information on property appraiser websites. You can go onto these sites, find out who the owner is. You can do your due diligence. KeyRenter, we have in all of our applications, it says, don't send anybody money. We do not advertise on Craigslist, and we don't advertise on Facebook Marketplace. So if you look at a place, you look at an apartment on Facebook Marketplace, go on Zillow, go on Redfin, see who the property manager is. Do a blind call to that office. Say, hey, are you the property manager of this property? I'd like to do a showing. Even if you've already talked to somebody online, if you can't do a face-to-face with someone, it's a scam. Please, keep the money in your pocket. Don't send it out.
Great advice. Now, if you were starting your property management career today with AI and automation on the rise, what would you do differently to prepare for the future?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, I don't think, if I was starting today, I would do things that differently. I never really had a lot of employees. I think really the difference is that streamlining technology limits the amount of employees you really need in the field. I think I would use AI a lot more. I used to walk properties. I would look up listings, and then I would just go to a neighborhood and I'd walk. Now with AI, and like I mentioned, you go on the tax appraiser's website, you can go on Google Earth. I think a lot of what that would do for me is I'd be able to cover so much more ground from my office. And, things I look for in the field is you don't want to buy the smallest lot in the neighborhood, right? You don't want to buy the most expensive place in the neighborhood. You want to find something that's kind of medium on the road. You want a nice sized lot. You want to make sure that the property itself is a big square footage or as big as the rest of the units, right? You don't want to have a big lot with a small little house compared to your other people next to you. So all of that kind of information, you can see it online right now. You can Google Earth things. You can do a lot of research on transportation, schools. I mean, more and more, one of the lessons I learned in Chicago back in the 90s is people want to live in neighborhoods where there's good schools. That hasn't changed. People want to live in good communities that have low crime rates. That hasn't changed. So do your due diligence online, where before we didn't have those things. So I think there's a big difference in being a property manager that just waits for properties to come to you, or what we like to do, we like to try to identify good investments for our bigger property investors. So the use of AI and those kind of tools can educate you that you are the local expert, right? That's what you have to be in our industry. As a realtor, you know that, right? You can't, and it's okay to say, I don't know. Hey, let me do some research. Let me give you a really great answer, and spend your time. AI and technology is really the future. I love it. I love doing self-access viewings, and using AI and technology to get somebody's driver's license, do a quick FaceTime with them with their driver's license after they send us a picture, send them to the property, be on the phone with them. you can't be everywhere at the same time, right? We have to, I cover a huge territory, and we use tools like that. We use verifications to make sure that we're dealing with the person who they are. So I think you have to embrace technology. I think you have to have a good team around you. And I think that's really the future, right? So what I'm doing, as I mentioned previously, there's a new CRM system that is really AI driven with AI attendance. And I'm investing in that process. And I'm leaving my old CRM, and I'm really moving towards I'm trying to embrace this future. I'm an old dog, so I'm trying to learn these new tricks. But I think that really, you can't ignore it, right? We gotta embrace it. But it's not gonna, the one thing about property management is you have to go to the property. That's 3-4 times a year. You have to have vendors that are your partners. So if they go to a property, they'll snap a picture underneath the sinks. They'll snap a picture of the AC filter. They'll use all their senses, and you have to communicate with them. Send me a picture of the unit while you're in there. Does it smell? Is it being taken care of? Are there issues? Was there a dog there? I love to ask my plumber, hey, was there a dog there? Was there anything? Because there's no dog in the lease. Now there's 2 dogs in the house, right? We can't be everywhere all the time, but it is the property manager's obligation to do routine inspections and using your vendors, we have a move-in process where we send the tenant a link, and they have 48 hours after move-in to do a full inspection on their phone. Anybody with a smartphone can use it. They go around, they take pictures, they highlight any issues, a cracked tile, a blemish in the countertop. We really work with our tenants to make sure, hey, we want to know, we do the best we can, but we want you to do it as well. And we want you to highlight any issues so that when the security deposit disposition process starts on move out, we're going to be on the same page. You had an opportunity to do your own inspection. We have an opportunity to do an inspection, and we can compare notes, right? And that's great with technology. I've had a lot of people say, well, we don't have a computer, we don't use technology. I've never been in a home where there wasn't a smartphone. It just doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, everybody has one. If you don't adapt to AI in the next 3 to 5 years, what do you think happens to property managers who resist change?
Well, we see that already a lot in Florida. When I moved to Florida in 2017, one of the lessons I learned is I called 15 property management companies. And I said, ones that didn't answer, I own this property. Can you give me a rental value on it? Tell me a little bit about your pricing. I'd love to discuss it with you. I got 1 call back out of those 15 calls. So those were people already in 2017 that weren't embracing technology. They weren't using software, didn't have answering services, answering calls, returning calls. And it's always been is that, I believe even though I'm not the best at technology, we are a technology company, right? We have, there's software out there that we use every day. Tenants have a tenant portal. Owners have an owner portal. We have pay slips that you can use on your smartphone. You can pay your rent at CVS, at 7-Eleven, at Walmart. You go to the checkout line, you can pay in cash. You have to embrace technology. When I used to do property management in Chicago, I collected in cash 80% of the rents every month. I drive around, I kept notes. I remember when the BlackBerry came out. I thought, this is great. I can keep the notes in my big BlackBerry, right? The size of an iPad. And now 97% of our rents are paid electronically. And that last 3% are people that mail in money orders and mail in checks and do things the old-fashioned way. But you have to always step up with technology, or you're going to be killed by payroll. You're going to be driving yourself nuts, and we still have elderly people that were born in the 50s that don't want that. And we do whatever we can. We have one guy we like, our property manager stops by and picks up a check from him every month. And I'm not saying that's the right way to do things, but he asked nicely. He's a good person. I want, he's not the most mobile guy. So we do what we can to help our people. But you got to embrace technology. Those people are falling off every day. I believe our industry is new, as in the last 10 years. I believe that property managers, residential property managers that don't work for the HOA is a newer look, right? I believe that a lot of people that were doing property management were real estate brokers that had clients that would sell properties to and say, oh, we'll handle it in-house. They're not doing inspections. They're not doing background screening. Realtors use a non-FICO score to present credit applications to us. I say, I'm sorry, your applicant has to do a background screening through us because we need to know what we're dealing with. We have HOAs that have credit score minimums. And the rent spree or whatever realtor's new system they use is a much higher score than what the HOA's, FICO score. So I know I'm getting in the weeds here, but you have to embrace technology. You have to use the latest systems or you're going to fall behind. What they say, that's why they call the old people dinosaurs, because they're not long for this earth.
Yeah, that's true. Now, last question, we'll go on AI and then we'll talk about the big picture for a couple of minutes. What's the one manual day-to-day task you hate the most that you still haven't found a way to automate?
I mean, it's part automation, but people can ignore automation. It is delinquencies. One of the toughest things in our business is people that don't pay their rent on time and they don't communicate with us. So rent's due on the 1st, they get multiple messages through our property management software. Hey, it's around the 25th, rent's due on the 1st, then on the 1st, rent's due today. On the 2nd or the 3rd, your rent is late. You'll be receiving a late fee on the 5th. On the 5th, they get a message that says your rent is late. At that point, we then go to the human side of things. We text them, we call them. No response. Now it's the 6th. Now we generate what in our industry is called the 3-day notice. It's a demand to pay. It's a legal document. And from there, now we're stuck. We've given the 3-day notice. The 3-day notice expires. The rent is due. The owners are paid on the 10th. Now the owners aren't paid. The owners are calling. And it's just a difficult time. Do we go to eviction? We haven't heard from this person. So that's one of the hardest things in our industry is to communicate with people that are stuck. I try to explain it to people like when a cat is cornered, you don't attack the cat. It's going to come out scratching. So that's when you have to use some kindness. You have to kind of appeal to them. You have to call multiple people in the family and you say, hey, I just need to know what's going on. We do not want to evict you. That's not what we're about. We rent it to you because we like you. We've had a positive experience, but if you don't communicate with us, we have to go to eviction. We are not the owners. I always say the owners are going to turn it over to their attorney and they're going to evict you. I'm here to stop this. How can we work together? Can you make a partial payment? So you just have to kind of fight through that hiding out. When somebody's life goes on a downturn, injury, child sick, mother sick, it's real hard. You're trying to just do the right thing, collect rent. But those are the tough ones. That's when it's really, AI can't help you. It is a human being that calls and texts and just tries to get an answer. And then, God forbid, you explain, hey, the next step is we're putting you under eviction. That's a $750 fee to you. If you choose to get whole before the eviction, you're now going to be spending $750, $800 just to avoid the eviction. So that's really the toughest part of our business, I think, is delinquencies and rent collection.
Now, Danny, after three decades of this business, what keeps you motivated to keep showing up every day?
One of my favorite things to do is to take on a project that we call, in real estate, the term is add value, right? I love identifying a great neighborhood, identifying a property that's, gone a while without any tender loving care, that needs a lot of work, and taking that property, finding an investor client to buy it, and then overseeing that project. Whether it's just paint, ripping out the old carpet, put in flooring, or the fun stuff for me is adding a half bath, remodeling the kitchen, maybe doing an addition, maybe adding a pool here in Florida to really get the value up. So to me, that creative side that I like to do is find that gem that's a rough cut diamond and then polish it. So I love doing that. I love, assisting owners in pulling permits and getting an architect or designer. I love that full service kind of aspect. And that's always fun to me because that's what I did in my early career. I would identify a property, I would buy it, I would fix it up over a couple of years and really try to get that rental value up and turn it into a real long-term solution. So that's like the fun part for me. That helps me out when I spend a couple hours in the morning calling tenants to see if we're going to have to go to eviction. So we're working in that. And then I really do get a joy of getting that call or getting that referral from somebody that I know. And they say, hey, I'm looking to do my first investment property, but I'm scared. Or I wanted to sell my home, but I can't, but I'm afraid, I hear horror stories about, tenants pouring cement down the sink. It's like, you hear that all the time. I've been in this game 30 years. I've never seen anything like that. Yeah, I've seen a unit trashed. It happens, right? But I've never seen, direct damage. Taking someone who's unclear and giving them a financial future in real estate, and then they get that bug. And when that light switch goes on, and now they're an investor. And now they want to look for the next one. And now they're excited. I love that. I mean, to me, that's the greatest feeling in the world.
Now, if you could leave our listeners with one piece of advice about building long-term wealth through property management, what would it be?
There's an old expression in real estate. When's the best time to buy real estate? 10 years ago. When's the next best time to buy real estate? Today. Okay? Don't get hung up on interest rates. Don't get hung up on all this noise. There's going to be a recession. You're never going to buy the dip on purpose. You're going to buy the dip, you buy the dip. But buy a property, buy something that's add value. Don't buy something that somebody's already fixed up, that somebody already put all this money into, so you're paying a retail price. Buy something, fix it up to the best of your ability, clean it up. Maybe it's putting lipstick on a pig, we like to say, just doing a couple of things, and get it rented. Equity, right? It's not cash value or cash on cash returns every month. It is equity. Get a property today. 3 years from now, 5 years from now, you're going to have a lot of equity in that property. You do that, you buy a property every year and a half, 2 years. Within 10 years, you have 5 properties. The first property you bought has a tremendous amount of equity in it. Pull out that equity, fix up a property. Maybe you got to sell one that's not performing, and do it. It won't take you that long. You're going to have a whole stable of properties. You're going to have a lot of equity, and that is your generational wealth, right? You're not going to have generational wealth working a 9-to-5 job, right? You're not a CEO or your middle management. Invest in real estate, right? Obviously, you have a 401k. Maybe you play the crypto game. Maybe you're in the stock market. But own real estate. Have these income-producing properties that you can give to your kids. Every time you have a kid, get an income-producing property. Build an LLC. Have your kid be the owner of that LLC. When they're 20 years old to go to college, that will be their college fund. That'll be their future, right? That's the key to generational wealth. Owning real estate, transferring that to your kids, putting them into LLC, hire a good property manager to protect yourself so you don't make the mistakes that you don't know what you're making, and give your kids the future. Give yourself that retirement. You buy that property now in Florida with me. We rent it for the next 10 years. You move down to Florida to retire in 10 years, you got a place to live, you got money, you can pull out some equity in there if you need to. But that to me is it doesn't matter where the economy is today. This is how you make generational wealth. This is how you put yourself in a position to retire.
Thank you for that great advice. Now, Danny, for anyone listening who want to connect with you, learn more about KeyRenter South Florida, or just follow along with what you're doing, what's the best place for them to find you?
Yeah, I mean, you can check out our websites. We have KeyRenterSouthFlorida.com, KeyRenterFortLauderdale.com, and KeyRenterJacksonville.com. We're in the socials. I'm not personally in there. I don't have time or energy to do that myself, but hop on our website, take a look. Hey, send us a message. I'm interested in owning an investment property in Florida. Reach out. We'll make it work. I'm an easy guy to get a hold of. I'm in my emails too much every day. Send me an email, Danny@KeyRenterPM.com. Happy to help you on your journey. I'm not looking to you to be my next client. I'm looking for you to get into the game. My competition is the homeowner that is their own property manager. I'm not competing against any other company. I'm not competing against anybody else. I want your business. I want you to be a property manager for yourself. Maybe you buy 1 or 2. We help you. I'll answer your questions. There's no obligation. And then when you have so many properties that you can't handle anymore and you got to be with your family and your full-time job, then you give it to me or somebody like me. But just get out of it, man. Buy a property. That's what you got to do. Get in the game. You know what they say about the lottery, right? You can't win if you don't play. So let's get in there.
Definitely true. I want to thank you, Danny.
Hey, I appreciate it, Marcus, man. It's a pleasure talking to you. And, Marcus is a realtor down in Texas. Great place to own investment properties. Great place to own real estate. Marcus is an excellent realtor. You guys should work with him.
Thanks, Danny.